out, when to retire, how much to live on, all of these things. Well, let's take a look. And now in this scenario that I'm going to show you, maybe this fits you to a T. Or maybe you're like, hey, I don't have near that much saved for retirement. Or maybe you say, I've got a lot more saved. What I want to do is really just show you how to figure things out, how to build your plan, how to think through it, and really just come up to also just what are your, general expenses here? How much can you spend off of this money? And so let's just go ahead and take a look. We're going to dive into what we call Nest Egg. It's a financial planning software that we use here at Jazz Wealth with our clients. And so we've got retired Roger and Mrs. Retired Roger, both of them 62 years old. And as far as expenses go, we're not as worried about their general expenses, but we do want to look at, what's going on here. They're married, filing jointly. We want to make sure that you're accounting for that properly, knowing that, hey, how are you filing for your taxes? Also, something we want to think about is where are they located? Well, they're located in Florida. That's where we're at here with Jazz Wealth. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. Savings, they're retired. We're not worried about their savings, but we are worried about their income. Income is one that you want to start to think through. What money do you have that's coming in outside of what you have already saved? Well, in this scenario, retired's got $2,500 at his full retirement age. Go to SSA.gov, figure out what your Social Security is going to be. That's a big one when it comes to retirement on factoring in how much you can actually spend in retirement. Also, we've got Mrs. Retired Roger here, $2,000 monthly at full retirement age. And then guess what? She worked a little while and got a little bit of a pension. She has $3,000 that's going to be coming in here. With the pension, think through this as well. Is there any cost of living increase? Any kind of increase here? Is there a survivor benefit? Is there anything that would go to retired Roger in the event that Mrs. Retired Roger passed away early? So that's something you want to think through. All right, now we've got to figure out what our goals are. Now, this is where it's going to get a little bit crazy because ultimately, that's what we want you to do is figure out, hey, here's how much I want to spend. Here's what I want to do. And think through all of these random things that are going to come up in retirement because ultimately there's stuff that's going to happen. And so you want to be factoring that in. And so right here, retirement age, we've got 62 and 67. We actually already have Mrs. Retired Roger also retired, so it's not going to change the plan one way or the other. Retirement expense, their base living expenses. This doesn't include anything other than your general expenses, food, utility bills, fuel for the car, things like that. They're at $5,000 a month. This also includes maybe going out to eat and spending some monies there. But I'm going to show you some other expenses as far as housing goes that's going to be accounted for elsewhere. But then we want to think through travel. What are their goals here? Well, 62 to 72, these are their go-go years. They want to live a little bit. They want to get out and do some things. Cruise the Caribbean. And so $20,000 a year is going to go from 62 to $72 years old. That's additional money that they're going to be spending. Then they have their slow go years from 73 to 82 where they'll spend $12,000. Now, all of these expenses, something that you got to think through that a lot of people forget about is inflation. Factoring in inflation, we're already building this into the financial plan when we're doing it for clients. But if you're doing this on your own and you're really trying to figure things out, make sure you're accounting for inflation. The federal government likes to shoot for 2%. We know that that's not the case here recently, but that's kind of their target. If you shoot at 2.5%, maybe 3%, do you want to factor in higher? You can, but I'm just wanting to make sure that you are accounting for that because if you're retiring at 62 and you're living till 90 years old, which is what we have them built to do, then potentially, $5,000 a month is going to be $6,000, $7,000 a month because of inflation years. Another thing that a lot of people forget to think about is a car. When you retire, you're going to have another vehicle at some point, unless you just, live in a golf cart community in the villages in Florida and you don't own a car at all and you drive your golf cart to Publix. So you've got the car here. They're just going to pay cash $35,000 every 5 years starting in 2026. They're going to buy it outright. And so think about those roof replacement estimates, AC replacements. You're going to have things that are going to come up, especially if you are a homeowner. Maybe you're going to relocate. Maybe you're going to buy a brand new home and you're hoping, hey, you know what? We're not going to have a lot of major issues. But ultimately, if you're retiring at 62 and you're living till 90 years old, there's a great possibility that you're going to have to replace some major appliances in that house. Think about those things. Think about when they were last replaced and look at that so that we can really factor those things in too. Now, they both agreed that they want to do a kitchen remodel in retirement. we hear a lot of that. You retire and it's like, hey, you know what? We're going to work on the house a little bit. And so they're wanting to do that. That's built into the plan. Healthcare costs. One thing that a lot of people don't think through when it comes to this is healthcare. And so when it comes to your healthcare here, we want to factor that in as well. Let me see if I can adjust the screen here to get that in right. There we go. And so we've got your annual healthcare costs. You've got to figure out what that's going to be. This is national average, $6,145 per person. It will depend. When you retire at 62 years old, you're probably going to have a little bit higher healthcare unless it's through the employer until you get to 65 at Medicare. Now with Medicare, depends on what you get there. Some people get, Part B, Part D, maybe a supplemental or some gap coverage. A lot of factors that come into play on what your healthcare costs are going to be. Annual long-term care costs. So we have in here, it's cut off just a little bit, but we have, misses at almost $60,000, 2 years of in-home long-term care here coming into play. So that's somebody, a nurse coming in, taking care of the missus the last 2 years of the plan. Retired Roger's like, hey, hopefully I won't need it. Hopefully the missus will take care of me. That's his thoughts on what he's looking at here, but you do have to think through that as well based on what their goals are. And I'll explain their goals here in just a minute on what they want at the end of life. And so also we have 2 kids. And so that kind of leads into this thing. So we've got 2 weddings that they're trying to account for. They've got 2 weddings that they're also saving for. All of these things are also taking into consideration inflation. Now, their goals here, because they have 2 kids, they'd also mentioned to me, they said, hey, I want to leave hopefully $1 million per child or close to that at the end of life. And so we want to start to say, okay, now we have those numbers as also that we want to think through and build in here. Now, they've done very well for themselves. They've got $2 million invested. Part of this money is in a pre-tax 401k, $1,050,000. You've got $450,000 in a Roth, and you've got $500,000 in a joint investment account. All of this is invested in a 60-40 portfolio. So that's the baseline there. And they've got their property. Now, I'd mentioned their total expenses here. This is actually accounted for separate. We have their property tax, their insurance, and then their HOA fee here. And so all of that is coming into play. Also, this is, looking at your annual tax increase of 3% there. That's for, again, inflation. Taxes sometimes seem to lead or be a little bit higher than general inflation when it comes to the increase. So we're trying to account for all of this in the plan. Then we say, okay, where are they going to sit? How much money do they have remaining? Well, we're looking at, future dollars and really accounting for how much can they actually leave for their children. And if we're looking at this plan right this second, they've got between a 95 and a 96% probability of success, 1.8 to 1.9 million, near just what they're looking for, not including the house. So you've also got the house. Now, what's interesting here is we've got to always look at the worst case scenario. What if something happens? What if somebody passes away unexpectedly? We can look at this here, and that's something with your plan, really based on your expenses that you may want to factor in as well, because this could derail your plan if somebody passes away early. In this scenario, looks like the missus is going to be just fine if retired Roger passes away at 80 years old. If I even change it to 75, I looked at this earlier, still on a great track there. Now, what about taxes? This is a little extra layer, a little bonus to talk through, but you're going to have to factor in taxes. And what you want to think through is where you're going to pull from first. In this scenario, we have retired Roger and Mrs. Roger. Now, the proposed plan's knocking them out early. So let's look at the current plan. At the current plan, they're spending down all of their taxable money first. Then they're going to hit their pre-tax accounts. Then they're going to, last but not least, touch the Roth accounts. Part of this is they want to leave $2 million to their kids. Would you rather leave $2 million that's in an IRA and then have the government say, hey, you have 10 years to withdraw all this money, they have to pay taxes on it? Or would you rather leave them $1 million each and say, it's tax-free money? Yeah, the government's still going to make you withdraw it over a 10 years period of time. That's the new rule, but it's going to allow them to get tax-free money. You are leaving a nice legacy there. Now, also, we want to think through conversions, Roth conversions. Does it make sense in this scenario? As you can see, there's potential opportunities here to really do some great conversions, especially in those early years. So thinking through this again may not be exactly what your plan looks like, but it's something to consider to get your wheels spinning to make sure that you're doing the right things for your retirement. Thanks for watching. If you want to learn more about Jazz Wealth and how we can help as fiduciary advisors, go to jazzwealth.com. If you want more educational content, be sure to check out our videos here.